There we go. How you guys doing, everybody? This is the Wrestling with Reality podcast. I want to welcome everybody, all our fans. Thank you for joining us. We've been doing a few episodes, and this one is no exception. Want to welcome our guest here on the Wrestling with Reality podcast, along with myself, yours truly, Chris Klosh, your host, and Eric Malikian, your host. Our guest today is the one and only WWF journeyman, being in UWF. We're going to talk about his entire career. Larry Ludden, aka Larry Lane. How you doing? Welcome to the Wrestling with Reality podcast, my friend.
Oh, it's great to see you guys again. I'm looking forward to going down memory lane and talking about wrestling, my favorite topic.
Yes,
we're very much looking forward to it too.
Yeah, same, and same too. Our favorite topic as well, and we've been looking forward to this one for quite some time.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you.
Well, Larry, I'll start it off. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you broke in professional wrestling.
Okay, well, where the desire started, it's a funny story, but I came home one day, I was 11, and my dad said we're going to go see wrestling. And when you're 11 years old, it's still cool to, hang out with your dad on a Saturday night. And so I thought we were going to go see like amateur wrestling where they're on the mat and they have the ear protection. I had no idea. I never watched an episode in my life. And we got there and I saw a boxing ring in there. And then I thought it was collegiate wrestling. And I could tell you about 2 minutes after I got there, I knew it wasn't a collegiate, crowd. I said the people had more toes than teeth. Some of these people that were there. But when I got there, I'll never forget the very first match that ever came out. The very first match I ever saw live was Larry the Axe Hennig, Kurt Hennig's dad. Larry the Axe Hennig wrestled a guy named Bill White. And the match started these two big barrel-chested guys that had to punch each other in the face 10 times to start the match. And I said to my dad, Dad, this is all BS. And people looked at me like I was the devil, like I was saying that. And my dad's like, Larry, he's like, be quiet. And I'm watching this stuff, and I was just mesmerized that 20,000 people were standing up, screaming at the top of their lungs, watching these guys do this. And I decided right then and there I had to get in on it. So at 11 years old, all I ever wanted to do from when I was 11 up until forever was be a wrestler. That's all I ever thought about doing. And long story short was I got to be about 19. I was not an ideal, perfect teenager, to say the least. And my dad woke me up one day and he said, come with me. And he took me down to the Armed Forces recruiting station. He said, pick one: Army, Navy, Air Force, or Marines. And he was very serious. So I went to Marines. And I thought for sure my wrestling dream was never going to happen because now I was in the Marines. And I got out of the Marines, and about 2 weeks after I got out of the Marines, I found, you remember, Jesse Hernandez and when they had G Street Arena. I went there and I just fell in love with it, and it never stopped from that day up until now. I've just always been enamored with wrestling. And that's basically how it started. I started off with Jesse and Billy Anderson and Luis McCauley. I started off, doing WWF enhancement talent. I worked for Herb Abrams, UWF. Did all the independents, and then I ventured out to the USWA. Did a lot of Lucha Libre, and about 6 years later, I went to Florida, and I've been there ever since.
Larry, I got to tell you, I have a similar story about kind of how I got enamored with this business. Is that my first show I went to was at the LA Sports Arena. I was growing up in Los Angeles, and went to a house show, but it wasn't until like about 2 or 3 shows later that I was just mesmerized by the people in the audience. I was looking at them because we would go to Dodger games. We didn't go to too many Laker games because they were very expensive, but we go, and I remember sitting in that arena, the sports arena, and that's where the Clippers played. I've been to a couple Clippers games at that same place. And I remember thinking to myself, like halfway through the show, to the point where my mom was, "Hey, are you okay? You're not watching the wrestling. What's wrong? You're just looking around." And I remember yeah, I was mesmerized by, we go to these Laker games, these Dodger games, and the fans are looking the way they are at the game, and the fans at the wrestling were looking the exact same way as they were at a Laker game or a Dodger game. And I was like, I can't believe this product, this entity is getting these fans to pay attention to it the same way they are a sport. And that was my moment of like, wow, I want to be behind that. I want to be behind that curtain because this is amazing. I'm still in a way. I mean, I get it now, but I'm still enamored by it, and I can remember that feeling I had as a kid, just kind of that realization, aha moment, where it's like, wow, they're getting these people to react the exact same way they would at a regular sport.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, that was the same exact. And I was 12 when about the time it happened for me.
I was 11.
Yeah,
I was 11.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very cool.
Well, Larry, tell us a little bit about your military career and how that led into your training in professional wrestling.
Yeah. Well, I was stationed. A lot of my time was in Southern California. And I love the area. So when I got out, I decided to stay in Southern California. As far as my training in the military, I was in a unit called 1st Anglico. That stands for Air Naval Gunfire Liaison Company. And what we would do, I was a paratrooper. So we would actually jump out of helicopters, jump out of planes, and we would go to what's called a LODA, a large open danger area. So, for example, we would sneak in there, and if a big battalion had to cross a large open danger area, we would do what's called pre-plot fire missions. To where if they got attacked by fire, we would know where to drop artillery, naval gunfire, and close air support to defend them. So if you watch, I don't know if you watch a lot of these war movies, movies like Platoon that came out over the years.
Yes,
where you see where they come under fire, and some lieutenant gets on the radio, and 20 seconds later they're dropping bombs on the enemy. It does not work like that. It doesn't work like that at all. The way they do it is they go in and they pre-plan set points. So if the shit hits the fan and they start catching fire, then they have the ability to drop the bombs. And that's what my job was to jump out of planes and do what's called pre-plot fire missions. If that makes sense to you guys, that's what I did.
Now, when you broke into wrestling, how did your training for that compare to your training in the military?
Eric, it's a good question. And I tell this to a lot of people. I spoke to a lot of kids. I went through Marine Corps boot camp. I played football in Texas in high school. Can you imagine 2-a-days in Texas heat? So I went through that. I went through 4 years of the Marines, specialized training, boot camp, airborne training. I went through all of that. Nothing will ever be more physical in your lifetime than a quality pro wrestling academy. I just remember the soreness, the back of your chin, the back of your neck when you first start wrestling from tucking your chin, that soreness, that pain. It was the most physical thing I've ever done is Wednesday nights and Saturday nights at the G Street Arena. That was the most physical thing I'd ever done.
Now, the G Street Arena, is that connected to the San Bernardino Arena at all?
That is the arena. Let's
Okay.
just say it was on G Street. From what I understand, that got torn down many years ago. If I'm wrong, but that was my sanctuary. That was my second home. I love that. I love that building. Some of the fun that we had there, and the matches and the training. It was a sanctuary to me. I miss it every day.
Now, who specifically trained you?
Jesse was probably the person who had the most hands on. I worked with I don't know if you remember Bobby Bradley. I worked with Bobby Bradley a lot.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I worked with him a lot, but Jesse was the main guy. I worked with Billy and Louis McCauley a lot. Did a lot of training with them, but the guy who had the most hands on with me was Jesse.
Now, from there, how long was your training before you had your first match?
13 days.
Wow.
13 days. I was home, and I had a girlfriend, or she may have been a wife. I get confused. That's been a full menu in my life. And it was a Saturday, and they wanted me to. Two of the wrestlers couldn't make it, and they had ticket money. The way we used to do it, this sounds very archaic. Some of the new kids wouldn't understand it, but they used to assign us tickets that we were responsible to sell. It was almost like we were in the freaking Girl Scouts or something, But we would be given tickets to go ahead and sell, and that would decide, your match, who's over, who's under. Sometimes that's how it was. Ticket sales were big. So two of the wrestlers couldn't make it. And I'll remember the names, Sergeant Rock and Ivanowski. I'll never forget. And so Jesse said, listen, Larry, I need you to pick up the tickets and the ticket money and come down here, and I'll give you a free ticket to the show and some gas money. But I got to have these tickets accounted for. So I got there, and other wrestlers didn't show up. And so they had me come in the back, and they said, listen, you're wrestling tonight. And I said, what? I said, I haven't even been here 2 weeks. They said, no, you're wrestling tonight. And the first, I remember I wore they made me wear size 10 boots, and I wore 12. I was miserable. My feet were killing me. And they put me in someone's tights who weighed 300 pounds. They had to put a bobby pin around it so they wouldn't fall down. You remember Spanish Hitman Frankie Valdez? I don't know if you remember him from many years ago. I had to wear his tights. And they called me Houdini. I was replacing another guy named Houdini. So I wasn't even Larry anybody. My first match, I was Houdini. And it was me and Billy Anderson versus Louis Spicoli and Tim Talltree. This is going back a ways. And it was a 24-minute match. I took the heat for 20. They beat me up for 20 minutes. That was the match. But I loved that. Was my first match ever. That's how it started.
Wow. Now, Tim Talltree, his father was Tom Ernesto, who was one of the original Masked Assassins, correct?
Absolutely. Correct. Yeah.
Now, from there, I have a story to ask you. You wrestled at San Bernardino for your tenure out in SoCal, correct?
For my what? My tenure in SoCal?
In SoCal, did you wrestle at the San Bernardino Arena?
Many times. Now,
yeah. Were you on the first show that Dave Marquez and a guy named, was it Rudy Luna promoted?
The second name sounds very familiar. Ruby Luna.
Rudy Luna was, what was his name? He was the biker guy.
Black Steel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was on those shows. Yeah.
Okay.
I was on those. I remember the one show we did out in the middle of the desert. They told us that there was no pay, and they said you guys could split the cash box, and so we all started shooting over change in the cash box, literally shooting in the dressing room, so we'd have enough money to get gas to get home. That was my only concern. Yeah, I remember that show. Yeah, I was on a couple of them shows.
Okay, yeah, I've heard about that that Black Steel guy and Dave Marquez were the promoters of those shows.
Black Steel was an interesting guy. He was the guy. if you go, you'd have to talk to some people, but he got kicked out of a TV taping for WWF because he wrestled a match with the Warrior, and he wanted to start calling high spot. I should have laughed because he was a friend, but and he's not with us anymore, so I don't want to, say anything too bad about him. But I mean, he actually somehow in the match they broke a camera. I mean, can you imagine you're a jobber doing a WFU taping, you're wrestling the Warrior, and somehow they ended up breaking a camera and they started shooting on each other, and it was just a fiasco. And I remember they made him leave. They told him to get dressed and get out of there. And that was a Rudy story. I remember his son wrestled too.
Now, Black Steel, he was a pretty tough individual, correct? I've heard quite a few
very,
stories about him over the years.
Very tough. He had us scared. I mean, when we would hear his motorcycle pull up because thing was so damn loud. I mean, and like all those of us who were Greenhorn students, we started getting nervous because we knew he was coming in. Yeah, he was a legit tough guy. I mean, he was a legit old school tough guy. I wouldn't recommend somebody, taking liberties with him. Nobody ever did either. Nobody ever did take liberties with him.
Well, back then, a lot of you guys were pretty tough from what I hear. I heard, pretty much that none of you guys were pretty much to mess with because you guys were taught properly and taught, the ins and outs and how to shoot if need be.
Well, yeah, I mean, back then it was, the couple things was one thing that Jesse really did a lot for us was he mixed up the lucha and the American style, but we did shoot wrestling the first 30 minutes every Wednesday and Saturday. I mean, they would take us down on the mat, and his thinking was, though, I mean, if you could shoot even a little bit, a bully's not going to mess with somebody who could shoot back a little bit. He's going to want to mess with somebody that's not going to shoot back at all. So that was it was a lot different back then. I mean, it was a lot tighter. But we did a lot of amateur wrestling. Yeah, it was a pretty good sized crowd. I mean, I remember they're the nicest people in the world. We had so many of the Samoan wrestlers there. They were all so freaking nice and cordial and friendly. But boy, they looked like the wrong guys you ever want to upset. I mean, I remember just so big, man. They were just so big, so talented. I remember James was just such a good friend. I'm sorry I lost touch with him, but yeah, we had a tough crew back then.
Go ahead, Chris. You want to take it?
Yeah. Speaking of going into, and yes, I completely agree with when the Samoan guys came through. They were generally just very family oriented, kind of nice type people, and it was always nice and a joy to work with them. And yeah, I don't want to mess with them, right?
No,
but,
not at all.
Yeah, but now we're going into your WWF career a little bit here. I mean, the who's who: Ric Flair, The Undertaker, Sergeant Slaughter, Lex Luger, and the list goes on and on. Crush, all those guys. Bob Backlund, which I was there for at Long Beach, and you kind of wrestled more baby faces. I want to say, I could be wrong, but how was that experience? And can you talk in a nutshell, like what was your highlight in all those matches, just being in the WWF and being on television the way you were, and what that did for your career? And I got to tell you, I was there in Long Beach when you lost to Bob Backlund. The sportsmanship was so great because you put the hand out, you shook the hand, and he raised your hand, you raised his. And for a kid to see that, it taught me a lot about good sportsmanship playing sports.
Yeah, that was a good moment for me. I was really lucky. Tony Gurria liked me a lot. Him and Rene Gallet, and I wish I had stayed, doing TV tapings with them. But basically what happened was I relocated to Florida, and I didn't want to really do preliminary anymore. I had had enough of it. But like when I was there, they would always ask me who I wanted to work. They never. It would be funny because like they would turn the blackboard to all the jobbers, to all of us. They would turn this blackboard, and you're sitting there not knowing who they're writing you down with most of the time. So people would see, you got this guy or that. Some guys would be happy. Some guys didn't want who they got. But I was lucky. Tony Gurria would always point aside and say, "Hey, who do you want to work tonight? Do you have any idea?" I said, "Well, but I chose Backlund. I mean, I said, can I wrestle Bob Backlund tonight? I mean, I've always wanted." They said, "Sure." So a lot of times I would go there. They would ask me, who I wanted to work with. At the beginning, I was wrestling a lot of the a lot of the heels. When I first went there, like DiBiase was the best wrestler, the best professional. You say, just locking up with him and being in the ring with him, it's a different. He's so crisp and so smooth, and everything is so fluid. If you study all of his matches, I've never seen him have one that was terrible. If you think about it, have you ever you go back to Ted DiBiase match? Which one sucked? And I never.
That's a good point. You got a lot of great ones that you can pick out a couple sloppies, but boy, yeah. I mean, I never really thought about that deeply about as far as has he ever had a bad match kind of thing. And no, I can't think of one. You're right. Absolutely right when you said that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He was probably my favorite. My least favorite, and I said I'm always careful about what I say. I don't know. I just hate saying things that are just gonna rub somebody down. But I didn't like working with Luger. No. I mean, it was it hurt. I mean, it wasn't. I almost didn't feel safe. I mean, he give you that. When you take a bump, you take a suplex, you take a power slam, you take a backdrop. The best bump is when you take one bump. You land one time, and the move is over. I mean, if you ever watch my match with Lex Luger, he gives me a suplex. He gave it to me like he was a student, where he sat down on it. He didn't. I'd rather you're better if you take a suplex. You're better off having the guy snap it, and you just come down flush on your back. Than to crate you and let you like fall down. I didn't like working him, but a lot of people said he was an arrogant guy and this and that. I thought he was a super cool guy. He was really nice with me, but as far as being in the ring with him, it was just far different. But DiBiase was the best back, and believe it or not, I had a really, really good match with Crush with Brian Adams.
Yep,
we had a really, really good match, and a lot of those guys, most of the matches were pleasant experiences. I mean, I wrestled Baston Booger when he was the Monk, and even he hated the gimmick. And they never aired the match. The gimmick was so bad. If you ever know, they changed it. We had a match, and they never aired it because. Sorry, guys. They changed him.
We got some technical snafu. Most likely what happened was when the phone dropped, Larry may have hit one of the wrong buttons, but he can go ahead and tap on that link and come back in anytime now. But boy, Eric, fascinating interview so far.
Yeah, very fascinating. I believe we'll have to ask him when he comes back on, but I think he had Lex Luger's debut match in the WWF when he came in
as the narcissist.
Yeah, sorry guys.
Yeah, no problem.
Wrestling. I heard. Yeah, Luger wasn't great. I had the Monk. It just never aired.
Friar Ferguson.
Yes.
Yeah, they called him the Monk that time.
Okay.
And, but if you want to see the worst bump I've ever taken in WWE, if you could find me and the Beverly brothers, I mean, they almost killed me on that finish.
Yeah,
I took it good.
That was one of the most, crazy, devastating you don't hear about that much. You hear about them them that often. I mean, we got a colleague of ours. He's a true historian on them Beverly Brothers, but one of the craziest finishes of all time.
Yeah, I didn't want to take that. I was in Sacramento remember when John Nord, the Berserker, did that finish where he throws you over the top rope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I was there when a guy had a compound fracture.
Oh.
That move. Yeah, it happened right. I mean, actually, I was on deck. I was on deck to wrestle Perfect that night. Perfect and I were the next match up, and we're all of a sudden actually Gorilla in Gorilla Monsoon in Gorilla position jumps up and says, "Oh," he starts swearing. Sherry Martel starts swearing, and then I saw the highlight of it, open fracture right there.
Wow. Me and Chris are gonna throw off some names to you, from your time in the WWF, and you just tell us a little bit about working with them or any experiences you may have had outside the ring.
Go ahead.
Okay. Ric Flair.
I had a good match with him. I was going to work him again, but Tony Gurria said we looked too much alike, and I was bigger than him. It didn't look right. But we had a very good match. I didn't shoot on him, but if you watch the match, he gives me a headlock takeover, and I hooked his leg and took him back in for a pin. And I told my friends I was going to do it in the back. I said I'm going to grab him and I'm going to have it on tape, me having him down for a 1 or a 2 count. But he didn't know that was going to happen. But yeah, we had a good match. He was a nice guy. He was a nice enough guy to me.
How about and did you get the shock stick, the Mountie?
I loved work. We had so much fun working that match. He had told me that the job I did was, he had me thinking that there was actually a shock stick. So I mean, we had a really good match. I heard stories about him not getting along with people down the road. I don't mean the Dynamite Kid. I mean, I heard later. I heard these crazy stories, which I never saw that out of him. I thought he was always just a really cool dude. But like I said, we were jobbers. We didn't know the guys that well.
Did you did you have to practice the convulsions after the shock stick?
No, that was just go out there and wing it. That was just go out there and wing it.
All right.
How about Brian Crush Adams?
Maybe the most fun. When you wrestle somebody who's he's as strong as the Steiners. I could tell you that. I mean, if you ever see my match with him, he gives me a press slam where I leave his hands. He actually has me up in the air off his hands. He picked me up effortlessly, and really super nice guy. Gave me a lot. We had a really good match. The match played out perfectly well. I can't believe he did himself in. I just, shocking, just shocking. Yeah. Whoever says this business is not cursed hasn't been. I mean, I'm not a big spiritual or big religious guy, but this business, there's got to be something following it around, because the amount of people that I wrestle that aren't with us no more. I have no idea what the count is, but I had a great match with him.
How about the Warlord?
Match wasn't that good. He was. I got to know him. I became very friendly with Terry in Florida here. He resides here, so he.
Sorry to interrupt you, Larry. We can't hear you.
One sec, Larry. We can't. Maybe hit your. I don't know if you can hear us, Larry. If you can hear us, can you hear us at all? Are you hearing us? Do you hear us? Okay. Do you see your microphone? I don't know if you want to click your microphone, the audio there. That might do it. Maybe maybe your audio button, your microphone button.
So really quick, all right, producer Adam here. Let's have Larry jump up and then jump back in, and let's see if that cleared the audio.
Let me shoot him a text. He may not be able to hear us. I don't think he can hear us.
Oh,
Do you want all of us to jump? Do you want all of us to jump off, or just him?
no, just Larry.
Okay.
You guys sound fine? Yeah.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
tell him to leave, hit leave, and just come back in on the link.
so
all right.
I mean, incredible stories, right, Klaus? I mean, geez, working with Flair, working with Backlund, like, come on, this is the who's who's. And for me, that was my era of growing up, the golden age. Well, the new generation, the post-war, post-Hogan deal.
Yeah.
And my goodness, like you're talking to a guy that is still that has been in the locker rooms with a lot of the legends that we watch were his contemporaries.
Yeah.
My goodness, Larry,
I'm
incredible.
Here.
Yeah, incredible stuff so far.
Yeah, very incredible.
Great.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, right.
Clear. So go back, tell us about, Warlord. You were started telling us about how you've gotten to know him a little bit living in the same area in Florida, and then that's when we lost you.
Yeah, no, I know him here, and we've been very friendly. I see him at a lot of the Florida Panther games, but we'll say hi to each other. But the night that I worked him, it was late. I remember we were actually in the third or the fourth taping. So I mean that's bad. I mean when that really sucks if you're doing tapings for like from 7 to almost midnight and you don't wrestle till like 11 or 11:30. That's a long time to wait around. And he wasn't into it. It just, I don't know. Sometimes you're going to get in the ring and the person's not into it, and he wasn't. The match, it was okay, but it was nothing to write home. We didn't do anything creative. We didn't do anything. I always try to have one unique moment in a match. I mean, even if when I was doing jobs, I would always tell a guy, listen, let me throw a couple of punches and cut me off just so I look alive, not just like a sack of potatoes, and they would be fine. But that was one of my least favorite matches working him.
I'm going to ask you on a triage of backstage names, and just a caveat before you answer. We here at the Wrestling with Reality podcast, we don't involve ourselves with anything politically that's going on within or without the business here. So just give us your honest take and interactions with Vince McMahon, Gorilla Monsoon, and Bruce Pritchard.
Vince McMahon, always very professional. He didn't have a lot to do with the enhancement talent. That was really done by the agent. So, I mean, if I had one problem with Vince, and this is, this is, you guys brought me on the show to, be honest. A lot of stories that you heard about agents or personnel in the WWF approaching males for quote unquote favors, I can tell you that's 100% true. I can tell you without a doubt. I've been approached. I had some very flirtatious things, said to me. I know of other wrestlers, and my only problem with Vince is, he allowed it. He allowed it. When I used to watch these interviews where he would take no responsibility if a wrestler died from this or a wrestler died from that, I understand. Life's the work. What is he going to say? Open himself up to lawsuits? I get it. But, I was around when Mel Phillips was there, and I was around when, Terry Garvin was there. I was around when Lord Alfred Hayes was there, and there was a lot of unnecessary misconduct that went on, and Vince allowed it. And that's the problem that I have. And if you see the stories that he's going through now, I just can't feel sympathy for a billionaire who just couldn't conduct themselves like a civilized human being and allowed that to take place in the workplace. So I didn't want to get too deep. That's my, take on Vince. Bruce Pritchard, I was good friends with his brother. And you're not going to find two brothers who have different personalities more than Tom and Bruce. Wasn't very close to Bruce. Not at all. I mean, I had nothing bad to say about him. I just never really dealt with him. Gorilla Monsoon scared the living shit out of everybody. He ran that backstage with an iron whip. And I was very good friends with his son. And actually, I was at a show one time. It was really eerie because I saw him tell his son, listen, if you get tired, pull over and rest.
Wow.
And about a month later, he died in Pennsylvania. And Joey was a great, great guy. Oh, my God. You're not going to see a father and son who look more differently than Joey Morrell and Gorilla Monsoon. But, I mean, Gorilla Monsoon, he was the enforcer backstage for sure.
Did you, I mean, obviously I can't imagine someone losing the son, but I remember seeing Gorilla on the, I want to say it was the Survivor Series, the first one he did after, his son Joey Morella passed away. What was he pretty shaken up and a little bit different after that incident?
It's funny you mention that. I'm trying to remember, but I think my WWF TV tapings time had ended.
Okay.
Just before Joey died. I can't remember what year Joey died. But even if it wasn't, I was at the tail end of it. So I didn't really have a lot of involvement with Gorilla after Joey died. So okay. The answer is I don't know.
Okay. How about working with Sergeant Slaughter?
Great. It was it was great. It was he asked to work me. He actually asked to work me. Yeah, it was fun. You always get nervous when I'm trying to remember was the Iron Sheiks with him when I wrestled him?
No.
I don't think he
no.
I don't think he was. I don't think he was with him yet. That guy was scary, Iron Sheik. But no, Robert Remus was great. He was a great friendly guy, and he was actually becoming an agent when I worked him. He was an agent and a wrestler. He was making the transformation over. But he was a super nice guy. Really awesome guy. Nothing bad to say about him.
How about being in the ring with the big guy like Typhoon, Fred Ottman?
I became very close with Fred and John. I mean, actually, people ask me who are the probably nicest people that you knew backstage, and I would say probably Sherry Martel and John Tenta.
Wow.
I worked a lot with John and Fred when they did a lot of independents in Florida. So whenever they would come on a show, I would always be one of the two guys in the ring with them. But they were both Fred and John. I mean, these were two guys. Listen, if they wanted to kill you, or they had an issue with you,
you were done.
You were done. You were just done. You would need like a gun or something to even the odds. And but yeah, Fred and John were both awesome to work with.
I actually have a question. It's amazing that you just mentioned Sherry Martel and Fred Ottman because they just had their Dark Side of the Ring. This season, Device's Dark Side of the Ring, it's pretty popular amongst wrestling and non-wrestling circles. Did you get a chance to see either or? Actually, it was John Senza and Sherry Martel.
Right.
I couldn't hear. It was kind of loud. You're asking.
What he asked was recently on the TV series Dark Side of the Ring. This season, they just had one featuring Sherry Martel and then another one featuring John Tenta. Did you get a chance to watch either of those?
No, I didn't, okay. and I want to. Thanks for reminding. I like watching that show. It was. I was knee deep in some of those ones. Early on, but Sherry was she was so sweet. Unfortunately, she just couldn't get past she couldn't get past the opiates. I mean, I heard all the stories. She just, but she was so kind to everybody, and unbelievable. I mean, she's really a beautiful lady. I mean, they had to put makeup on her and all that to make her try to look hideous. But if you see her up close, she was a very, very
Beautiful.
attractive, very beautiful woman. Very.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, you being in South Florida, I know Ray Hernandez Hercules worked a lot around there. Did you have any interactions with him?
No, Ray. I knew Ray more from the WWF days when he was like Power and Glory.
Yeah.
And then when he was in Florida, we always missed each other. I know that he was wrestling a lot of thinking. I wrestled in Tampa quite a bit, but if you Tampa's the other side of the state from where I am. So I went to Tampa a few times a year, but I would see Ray here and there. Hello and goodbye. We weren't, really close. We didn't hang out, but I do remember him a lot from that Power and Glory. Could have done so much more. I mean,
I was actually just going to bring that up when you talked about it. I thought that was a very underrated team. I thought they could have done a lot more with them, and not to cut you off, but when the WrestleMania 7, when the Hart Foundation dropped to the Nasty Boys the titles, and then for the Nasties to win them, lose them to LOD the next pay-per-view. Boy, I thought Power and Glory could have been that perfect team for that little bit to hold on to the belts for a moment.
Well, you go back to those days of wrestling, the problems that they had with the Steiners and the LOD, the reason, they would put the titles on so infrequently because they were always leaving.
Mm-hmm.
They were, you had Ray and Paul Roma. I don't want to say homegrown talent, but the WWF could have put the titles on them and they could have been around for a long time. It was such a unique look.
Yeah.
Paul Roma looked like $1 million. Oh my God. He really did. And then you have, it was different because most tag teams, they look the same. It gets to be enough is enough already with everybody with the same tights and everybody has that same hairstyle. I mean, these guys one guy was 5'8", 210 without an ounce of fat on him in Paul Roma. And then you had Hercules, who just looked like a bruiser. It was a great gimmick, but they did a lot of things like that. The WWF, they did a lot of things that I remember they used to always do a thing where they would have like a WrestleMania, and then somebody who went over on WrestleMania would lose the next night on Raw somehow. And it was just mesmerizing. But I was a big fan of Power and Glory. They should have done more with them.
I'm right there with you, and I think they're we talked about the Beverly Brothers earlier with their finisher, but I think Power and Glory way ahead of their time with that double team finishers, Hercules suplexing him, and then simultaneously on the other ropes, Roma would jump on the guy, and very ahead of its time.
Yeah, it was great. They were great.
Now we're going to transition. I know prior to doing the WWF tapings that you did throughout the few years there, you worked for Herb Abrams in the UWF over at the Reseda Country Club. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences with Herb Abrams and also wrestling Billy Jack Haynes?
Well, Herb was an asshole. He was crazy. When I saw the Dark Side of the Ring, I wanted to throw up myself when I heard all these people talking about how sweet he was and how much they, what the things people do to put themselves over. I mean, maybe I'm just a little unfiltered, but he was such a horrible guy to deal with. He had no respect for the jobbers, none whatsoever. He really came off like a real ass clown, to be honest with you. Him with those freaking boots of his, and the guy was about 5'2", 5'3", and I was there. I don't know if you ever saw the taping, but he took a bump from Steve Williams and Paul Orndorff. They did a gimmick where those guys started brawling, and while Herb was doing the interview, and I whether they did it on purpose or not, it sure looked like they did it on purpose. They knocked the living hell out of him. The first night that we worked for him, he didn't pay the big names. He said he didn't have the money. I mean, I can tell you how. Imagine we're sitting in the I want to say the Anaheim Convention Center, an Anaheim, some arena in Anaheim, and you got Nikita Koloff and Billy Jack Haynes, and you got all these huge guys being told that they may not be getting paid, and boy, that was scary. I mean, I thought that Herb was in a lot of trouble, and then so I don't know. The show got suspended anyway. The show got suspended. We didn't even have the show, so yeah, that was an experience working for him. It could have done something. I mean, that the people that they had there in the back was literally the Hall of Fame. And as far as working Billy Jack Haynes, it was okay. Billy Jack looked like $1 million, but as far as being a fluid worker, he certainly wasn't. I mean, actually, the best program he ever had was with somebody who we just talked about, Ray Hernandez. That was the best program he had in WWF, and that was Ray carrying him. I mean, it was if you want. So I mean, Billy Jack, he was around forever. He looked like $1 million, but I never saw anything out of him as far as quality work that I was ever impressed with.
Now let's talk a little bit. I know we had I don't know if are you familiar with Dusty Wolf, Dale Wolf?
Yeah. Yes, I am. Yeah.
Okay, we had him on the podcast a couple months ago, and he told us about the infamous Steve Gator Wolf tours in Arizona.
Oh my God. Wow. I mean, imagine somebody who they should call it the Bad Wrestling Federation. The bad Wrestling Federation. I mean, just some of the garbage that they put on there. I mean, and such an opportunity too. I mean, they had opportunities to run. I mean, you guys still is the AIWF still around in California?
You mean the AIWA?
Oh yeah, maybe AIW Adam Maywood.
Yeah, Alex Knight and Ed Aarons. No, they haven't promoted in like 15 years. I wrestled on one of their last shows that they promoted.
They had the reason I had a falling out with them. This is a true story. This is how I don't want to drift, but I want to tell you this story. They brought me in and they said, how do we make AIWA better so we can possibly get television? They had a studio. I did some studio things there, and they said, Larry, what do we need to do? And I said, well, you got to get better wrestlers. And they would look at me like they were so offended. And I said, you can't put Captain Scorpio or the Violator or all these people that could hardly even. I mean, it was an embarrassment. We had a homeless guy. There was a homeless guy that came up to the ring one time, Captain Scorpio. He had his garbage can, or not his garbage can, the shopping basket with aluminum cans parked in the back. And they had their guys they wanted to be loyal to, and me and Ed had a falling out. I said, the problem, your reason your promotion isn't doing good, people don't want to watch, shit in the ring. And I don't know why. I mean, I liked Alex. He was a likable guy, but he was not the person to run a locker room. I'll just say that wasn't his forte. They should have, that was independent wrestling throughout the 80s and 90s, that you'd get television, and then all these companies would put garbage in the ring. It was mesmerizing that happened so many different times.
You tell us memories of teaming with the head slammer El Toro Bravo.
Yeah, that was my last heel role. My last heel role was being one half of the Rough Riders. And it's funny the way I made the transformation to babyface was he wrestled a show in my hometown, and they were like, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, if you're going to turn me face, you may as well do it tonight because we're in Oceanside." So I had 20, 30 people there that bought tickets, and yeah, that was the end. Edgar and I, we went different ways, and I became a babyface. Never looked back.
How was it working with El Toro Bravo? Because I've heard numerous different things and conflicting things about him.
He never tried, and he never put his hands on me. I made that quite clear. I mean, I saw some of the beatings. That's why I was glad I was tagging with him. But yeah, no, he hit hard. I mean, he had one of his best friends was this guy named JD Rage. They would come back they come back with black eyes and welts on their forehead. I mean, they were just into that stuff. But that never happened between him and I. But he was a legit tough guy, and he loved brawling. He liked, bringing it in. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I've talked to you guys on a couple of shows in the past. You know my philosophy. The reason, sometimes people work tight, in my opinion, is they work tight because they're not very good. But I think Edgar was just one of the guys that enjoyed it. I think he just liked working tight. But we had a lot of heat. I mean, we had a good look because, I was much taller, built kind of like a bodybuilder. He was shorter and stockier, built like a brawler. So, like I said, I like tag teams where people look different. I don't like tag teams where people are mirror images of each other. It's okay here and there, but it's overkill. But we had a good run there.
Memories of your interactions with Dusty Wolf.
Good guy. Been around. I just knew him on shows. I never really hung out with him. If we did, maybe it was at a Denny's or a restaurant. But, when I wrestled in Southern California, it was always me, Cole Redondo. We always lived an hour and a half away from everybody. So, we always, try to get out of there as quickly as we can. But I remember Dusty, been around. He was a good guy. Hope he's doing well.
He's doing well. He's actually a teacher at a college out in San Antonio where he lives.
Nice. Well, he was a smart guy. That's good. I guess if you're a teacher in a university in San Antonio, you can't be a dummy. So, no, Dusty was a good guy.
Was there, speaking of the other enhancement guys, was there ever like a hierarchy or a pecking order where guys, let's say like the guys that were there for a while, like Horowitz or Mike Sharp, was there like was there ever any tension, or were you guys pretty much good camaraderie as far as like, hey, we've been here longer with this and that, the other, we deserve these spots on TV, or was it pretty civil?
It was civil. It was very civil. I actually know Barry Hartz very, very well. I booked him on many shows. But him, Reno Riggins, Mike Sharp was he really did hang out with the enhancement talent. So I didn't know him very well, but I would say the senior guys when I was there were Horowitz, Reno Riggins, Dale Wolf. Yeah, then I would be up there. I mean, Louis Spicoli, myself, But there was no pecking order there. There was it didn't work like that.
How about were you familiar with Gary Key, enhancement guy who later became the masked Tool in XPW?
Gary and I are very close. I miss the guy a lot. His XPW was I had already departed to Florida when that had happened. So when I wrestled Gary Key, we were basically students. I may have been a year senior to him, but we were Gary. We had TV taping in San Francisco or Oakland for Woody Farmer, Bay Area Wrestling. We were on Bay Area Wrestling. And they would fly us up, take us to a Chinese buffet, take us to our hotel, pick us up, let us wrestle. We would do the same thing the next night. They would take us to a buffet, wrestle, and it was a great experience. We were on television, so I wanted to get tan, and we were in the middle of downtown Oakland, or not Oakland. What is it? Oakland? Anyway, I think it's near Oakland. I can't remember, but we were in. I think it was Oakland, and I'm sunbathing on a busy street corner. I mean, it's like 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. There's cars everywhere. Here's this big 250-pound guy with long hair. I'm sunbathing on the street corner. And Gary Key from the 4th floor took a bucket of water and doused me with it from the hotel. Yeah, no, Gary is a great guy, but I miss his XPW. I wasn't there for that.
Did you, when you looking at your timeline and it's saying that Typhoon was your last match as far as being enhancement in WWE, was there, when that ended, was it because the format was kind of changing? They were doing away with those type matches?
No. What happened was, in that point in time in California, 93, 94, the only thing you were getting booked on, the only bookings I would get were WWF enhancement, a shot in Tijuana every so often. You remember Mr. Outrageous Al Burke?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, he got me on those military and Indian reservation tours, about twice a year. So that was it. I mean, the independent, even the lucha independent scene was, you had that every Sunday, but there was no pay there. But every Sunday, if you wanted to get in the ring, you had a way to get in the ring. But you're only working 20, 30 times a year there. And I was like, well, if I'm just going to work 20, 30 times a year, what's the point of me, staying here? So I made a contact in Florida, and I was working close to 100 times a year, probably. I worked every weekend for sure. It was just a lot better. I mean, I just wanted to be in the ring, and it was a pleasure going to a show and being an independent and not knowing who you're going to wrestle, but knowing that you're going to win some and lose some, and you're going to be a part of the show versus just enhancement. And I just didn't want to do it anymore. But I left from California to Florida, and that's where I also had my reality check that, okay, I'm wrestling on the weekends. I'm still not making a lot of money, so I better, that's when I A, bought a pool company, and B, went back to college and went to school at night till I got my medical assisting degree. But that's really the only reason my WWF days stopped was I went to Florida. I really didn't want to do it anymore.
Did you, speaking of going to Florida, and before you even mentioned that, were you any inkling or desire to check out possibly working in WCW? Once I laid money down and bought a pool company, I said to myself, if you own a company, you're married to it. You're just married to it. So the answer was I never pursued it. And if they had called me to do like enhancement talent back then, even though it was up in Atlanta, I wouldn't have done it. I would have said no. Okay.
I probably could have. I knew some people that were there. I probably could have gotten in, but that didn't interest me at all anymore.
Yeah.
Also, really quick, a name that I think gets lost in history is, especially when it comes to Southern California, like legends. You mentioned Louis Spicolli, Madonna's boyfriend, Rad Radford. Any memories or stories of him?
Many. Yes, some I may not share. No, crazy. Here's a crazy story about Louis. A crazy fact about him. He was a better baseball player than he was a wrestler. He could have. He had every ability to be a professional baseball player. He got into wrestling, and I never saw him in all the shows that I've been with him. All the times I rode with him. I mean, we drove all over California, and oh my God, never saw him smoke a joint. I never saw him take a drink. I never seen him take a pill. When I moved to Florida and I heard what had become of him, I was stunned. I had never seen that out of him. He was such an incredible worker. I think at times, you talk about somebody that could be their own worst enemy. I think that he was very abrasive. If you know what I'm saying. He had an abrasive personality. I mean, if he didn't like you, you were going to know he didn't like you. But as far as pure talent goes and being like an in-ring worker, he could have been one of the best ever. He's probably the best in-ring performer / independent talent that I ever been on a show with in California. I'm just trying to think of who else. He was just such a solid worker. And then, the way he died, and he was going to Atlanta the next day to sign a contract, and this happened. Just a tragedy. But I learned a lot from him. I mean, I was older than him. That was the amazing thing. When I broke into the business and started having my first matches, I was like 23, getting close to 24. He was 17 or 18 when he started. So he was a veteran who was younger than me. And he was one of the first guys I locked up with. But what a waste of talent. What a waste. You hear that waste of talent. I mean, he was so good and such a good performer. I mean, if we reach anybody that's watching this tonight, don't do pills. I don't care. Pills killed wrestling. And this whole thing about people saying, well, you don't know what it's like. You're in the ring. You need the opiates. Bullshit. You're addicted. That's why you take them. It has nothing to do with you taking an arm drag. The reason that a lot of wrestlers die of opiates is because they hang out with a lot of other wrestlers who take opiates. And that's what happened throughout the 90s and early 2000s, where wrestlers are dropping left and right. So when I hear people say, oh, you don't know. Yeah, I understand you get in the ring, you get a bump here and there. But you take 2 Vicodin, you don't take 27.
Yeah.
So a lot of wrestlers work it up. Addicts justify their addiction. I learned that in wrestling a long time ago. Right. If it's cocaine, if it's alcohol, if it's opiates, they always justify it. They always have a reason why they're doing it, and they always it's. I can't even tell you people. I mean, I was on Perfect's second to last show before he passed away. He looked horrible. He looked nothing like the Kurt Hennig that I knew from Doug. He could hardly keep his head up. It was sad. It was just sad. But I was on. He actually won the title for the company I was working with him. He won it in I'll tell you where it was. Pembroke Pines, Florida. He won the FOW title on a Friday. And Saturday night, the next Saturday, he died in Tampa.
Oh.
Now, I went to high school with Louis Spicoli's half-brother, and do you think maybe it was a case of with him and like some others, maybe where they don't have a backup plan, and pro wrestling is everything to the point where it kind of, there's a little dark side in the rearview mirror to it?
Well, Louis, I guess I'll get kind of deep with you guys. You have me on the show for a reason. Here's what did Louis in. Louis came from money. Louis didn't come from, I don't want to say his life wasn't have to, but it wasn't have to. It makes a difference. When your life isn't have to, you tend to have more breaks, more, screw ups. And he came from a wealthy family. Also, the fact that we lived 45 minutes from Mexico didn't help. An hour from Mexico, you You get hooked on something, you go across the border. I mean, that was. I mean, I'll be very candid. I went to some of those pharmacies, wink, wink, nod, nod, in the 90s, and you would see autographed pictures of wrestlers in the pharmacies. I mean, that's not exactly kayfabing the fact that you were there, but they would have menus of things that you could take. They would actually have menus of steroids, opiates, whatever it is that you were looking for. You would take them there. So a lot of wrestlers in the Southern California became mules. You know what a mule is?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of that's so Spicoli became a mule. It's a fact. I mean, it's a fact. One of the reasons he was in WCW was he was a provider. I mean, he was talented. Don't get me wrong, he was talented. But living in Mexico, coming from a wealthy family, being so young. I mean, my God, he was so young. I mean, when you're famous and you're 20 or 21,
right?
That's tough. I mean, that's a tough. That's no pun intended. That's a tough pill to swallow, But yeah, Louis was a great worker. He had an abrasive personality. To be honest with you, I never had a problem with him. His abrasive personality never went my way, but he could have been one of the all-time greats.
It's interesting you talking about he came from a wealthy family. His dad was a well-known, famous realtor in the South Bay where I grew up. And basically, my understanding is the whole family, all his brothers and sisters, ended up becoming realtors, and they're doing well themselves.
Yeah, I exchanged pleasantries with his sister, birthdays, this and that. And I know that I don't know if she's still married I know she's married to Jason Peters. I didn't know that till later, but he was a good friend of mine. But yeah, that's a tragedy. It's just a tragedy.
I'm going to ask you about another name that a few people have talked about. Specifically, Mike Modest was on a podcast with my co-host Chris Kloss a year or two ago on the Extreme Memories podcast that Chris and George Hermosa do over at the Wrestling Chatter. And he talked about a guy named the Samoan Bulldog. Do you have any stories about him?
Samoan Bulldog. What do you know what his shoot name was?
No, I just know he was from Hawaii and came out to California and worked for Ed Aarons and Alex Knight. He also worked for Jerry Monty over in Northern California.
I'm going to guess I was already out of the state when he came around. Now, I knew Mike Modest. Well, Mike was incredible wrestler. Oh, my God. He was on that Beyond the Ring.
Yeah, Beyond the Mat.
Beyond the Mat, and Vince said, "Oh boy, he's got to work on that move." But that's the move. If you ever watched the move that Mike gave him,
yeah,
it looks so devastating that some of the people thought he hurt him for real. But also Mike had that guy who was like his agent or something.
Roland.
I don't know the guy, but I mean, if my agent showed up dressed like that to my TV taping, I would have lost my shit. I mean, I watched that. I think that worked against Mike. Mike was such a good wrestler, but when he rolled in there with really, if you roll into a tryout with WWF, and you bring an agent with you, you may as well not. You may as well just go home. I just can't imagine they're going to put up with that. But if you watch that, what was the guy's name again? Roland
Alexander.
How well do you know him?
Not well.
Me and Chris didn't know him at all.
Yeah, I mean, I was stunned. I mean, Mike. I talked to Mike. He was a smart guy, good worker. You can't bring somebody to a TV taping dressed like that representing you.
Now, I'm going to ask you. You said you spent the majority of your career out in Florida, and another polarizing character that was on Dark Side of the Ring this season. That's creating a lot of chatter and buzz is Buff Bagwell. Have you had any interactions with him?
My interactions with him have been so good. I've been on many shows that I can't believe this is the guy. I mean, I've never seen him. I've been on 20 shows with him. Very friendly, very cordial. He looks great. I mean, how old? He's got, what, 55 now?
Yeah, he's in his early 50s.
Yeah, he looks great. But you heard these stories about, you know, you've seen. I saw one of the shows, one of the, I don't know if it was Dr. Oz or somebody, but God, he looked so terrible. I know that he did it. He did a podcast where he had to give the money back. He went on one of those podcasts, not something to wrestle about, maybe another one, and he was so wasted they took the money back from him. Wow. But I've always had good experiences with him. But you know, I heard about some of his antics. You know, he wasn't. We were never in WWF at the same time.
Okay.
You there? You got me?
Yes. I hear you perfectly.
Okay, we're there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, everything fell apart. I'll get a better setup next time.
No, you're good.
Yeah, that's fine.
Did you say you wrestled in Memphis? SWA?
Yeah. I spent
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about that? I didn't know you had done that.
Oh, well, there you go.
Here we go. That was a big reality for me. I mean, as far as you remember when Lawler got in trouble with the allegations of the 13-year-old girl?
Yep.
You know, I can't say whether it's true or not. I can't, but I certainly know they put themselves in enough positions there where people would think it's true. That I saw some of this. That was the dirtiest territory I was ever in by a mile. You know, I spent a summer there, and I mean that you'll learn a lot there. You're not going to make a lot. You're going to drive forever. The driving is never ending. You drive about, you know, you average about 2.5, 3 hours a day. It wasn't bad. It was a good learning experience. It was a good, I should say this. It was more of a better life experience than a wrestling experience, if that makes sense. That's where I went there and I said, all right. I reeled it in a little bit and I said, okay, let's try something different. And that's actually where I moved to Florida. Right after that was done, I believe so. Maybe a year later is when I left to Florida. But some of the things I saw there, just bad. I mean, when I was there, it was the shows were horrible. I mean, it was depressing. You make it to the Mid-South Coliseum. That's supposed to be like a big moment in your career. You get to wrestle in the Mid-South Coliseum. And we went there, and there's like 500 people there. It was depressing. Yeah, when I went there, that was, you know, it was on the decline. It really was on the decline there.
And what year was this?
Boy, let me think here. I equate everything to news stories.
Was Eddie Gilbert still alive?
Eddie Gilbert was alive, but he had heat with them. This was around Rodney King. The Rodney King beating happened, I think, in 92. I believe it was 92 or 91. And I was there. I was there when it happened. I remember it on the news. But, yeah, I was there. And they had the Moondogs there. Tom Pritchard was there. Jerry Lawler was there. Eddie Gilbert was there. And then everybody else was local. Because they couldn't pay anybody anymore. I mean, they would do this all the time where they would book, like this week, Marty Jannetty versus Jerry Lawler, just to get people to the arena, and then they would put a sign up there that, hey, Marty Jannetty couldn't make it, we're sorry, and they would get like Brian Adidas, and people are like, I don't want to see Brian Adidas. I came here to see, you know, Marty Jannetty. And it was depressing though. It was the end. When I was there, it was at the very end.
Card subject to change.
Card subject to change. Well, they would change them all. They would change every night.
Memories of your interactions or even working with Eddie Gilbert?
I never worked Eddie Gilbert. I was on some shows with him, but I never worked with him. God, he's a short guy. Oh my God. I mean, I just, I, you know, I don't know. I thought his in-ring work was a little overrated, to be honest with you. I mean, I never saw anything stunning out of him. But yeah, I mean, he had a gimmick there, and his brother was there. We were in a Cracker Barrel, and him and his brother Doug were there, and we weren't allowed to talk to them. It was so stupid. The agents said that if you see them out in town, you can't talk to the Gilberts because they had some heat with them. So, you know, you're sitting there making $40 a night trying to sell photos just so you can eat. And if you see somebody in a restaurant, you're not allowed to talk to them.
That's a little odd.
It was odd. A lot. There was. I can tell you this. Some of the dirtiness that I saw there, and I mean, there's certain things I'm not going to repeat. Some of the conduct by the wrestlers and the females that played the quote unquote. I use it in tongue in cheek. The valets. That, you know, you go back all those valets. Yeah, that they were there because of their talent. Let me tell you, it was dirty territory. It was very, very dirty. The dirtiest territory I was ever in was the USWA.
Oh. What was your memories of Jerry the King Lawler and Jeff Jarrett? Jeff
Jarrett was awesome. Jerry Lawler would tend to kayfabe you a little bit, but I understand. He was Jerry Lawler, but nice guy, you know, friendly. His son was an asshole. But Jerry, you know, hello and goodbye. Jeff Jarrett was very engaging, a real gentleman. I drove with him, Eric Embry, and Tom Pritchard a lot. But you know, they're so young. I mean, Jeff, you know, you think about how young Jeff Jarrett was then. I mean, I think we're pretty close to the same age. I don't know who's older, him or I. He may be a year or two older than me, but no, he was nice. I mean, Brian Christopher was tough to deal with. Brian was something was off with him.
Well, we lost him maybe temporarily, but we were pretty much going to start wrapping up anyway. But okay, there we go. Okay.
You there? Boy, pretty incredible, Chris, everything that.
Yeah, it was, I mean, just, boy, you know, it's amazing you're in the business at that time with all those stars and again, that time in the business. And it's just the who's who, you know, he was really there during that massive era. And we will probably start wrapping it up here. We're over the hour, almost an hour 20, and we heard a lot. We heard, I mean, the stuff I didn't know, and just a lot. It was so much fun talking to him and hearing these stories. Just amazing.
Well, I mean, Taylor Swift has made sorry, a hell of a gimmick with eras. With the amount of eras that one Larry Ludden has gone through, Larry Lane, many incarnations, he is an era all to his own.
Yeah, look like the 4 of the Brady bunches there. Okay.
Yeah, we were just discussing everything you've been a part of.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah, I apologize. Whenever, for some reason, like when somebody calls me, it's knocking me out. So, yeah. But what were you asking me about? I'm sorry.
No, we were just discussing when we lost you, just everything you've been a part of through the 90s and through the 2000s and all the legends you've worked with, all the people, you know, when wrestling was really at an all-time high. And, you know, all these guys and yourself included were larger than life. It was a completely different business back then than it is now.
Well, yeah, you had more opportunities back when I was there. I mean, you had other places to go. I mean, listen. The toughest thing about being a wrestler now or coming into the business now is the only place you're going to make that I can see where you're going to make legitimate scratch doing this is to get to WWE. Well, they know that now. And not only do they know that, they have this state-of-the-art studio, so they could be selective. So before they even let you in, how many times of us, those of us who've gone to Wrestling Academy, or wrestling school, whatever you want. I would go in the G Street Arena, and we would get in the ring on Saturdays, be 25 people in the ring, and I knew 23 had no business being there. So back then, if you weren't a great athlete, you could still get in the ring and do something. Nowadays, you have to be a tremendous athlete even to get to the big show. I was watching some old WCW. God, we're going back to like early 90s. And I was looking at some of the garbage that they had the power plant thing going on. Remember those days, the power plant?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, they put some of the worst wrestlers. It was terrible. I watched the pay-per-view. Some of the people they put in the ring was so bad. They just degraded their own product. And that isn't there anymore. Nowadays, just to get into Orlando, you got to be in such incredible shape to begin with. But yeah, it's completely different business nowadays. It's not even remotely the same.
Mm-hmm.
As Chris was alluding to, we're getting close to an hour and a half in here, so we probably want to wrap it up soon. I know you've got a lot going on and things you probably need to attend to. We would love to have you, of course, back on again because there's so much more we could talk about. Can you just tell us a little more about what you're up to now and if you have any plugs? And one other thing before you answer that, is there anything you'd like to stress to any aspiring professional wrestler or even anybody who's currently up top in WWE? Maybe a little something you've learned along the way that maybe they could take to help them in their career.
I'm just going to repeat what I said the last time I spoke to you guys, is that if you're a wrestler, regardless of your age, how long you've been around, the best thing for you to do is don't be a mark. There's a saying, don't be a mark unto yourself. Don't be a mark unto yourself. Have a reality check. Around 1995, I said, okay, Larry, this isn't going to happen. You're not going to, you're not going to be the next IC champion, and you're not going to sign a contract, and you got kids on the way, and you got to come back to the real world. And I would tell all young aspiring wrestlers, have a degree to fall back on, have a vocational, get some vocational training to fall back on. I'm going to be 59. I have a real estate license. I'm a certified medical assistant. I've owned several pool companies. I'm also going to let you guys know the next time, or maybe the next time we do whenever it is, the next podcast, I won't be coming to you from South Florida. I'm moving to South Carolina. I accepted a job up there today. But the point being is, thank you very much. The point being is, if I didn't get training outside of wrestling, I wouldn't have this opportunity. So if you're 25, 30 years old and you haven't made a contract, have a reality check. Go back to school at night. Don't sit there and watch wrestling every single night like an idiot. Go back to school, get a degree, buy a business, buy a pressure clean company, buy a pool company, something that you can grow that can be your own. Do something. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Not for wrestling. You're very stupid if you put all your eggs in one basket for wrestling. I can't be any more frank with you about that. So, make sure that you guys, take care of yourself. And I can't stress enough, when you go to wrestling school, don't just practice a move or two you saw on television and call it. Get your heart going. If you're going to wrestling school, you should work out every day to where you almost want to throw up when it's over. That's where you have to push your body. You know, that's where, and I don't see a lot of people doing that. They want to do this move and that move. That's great, but get your lungs going, and keep yourself in shape. You know, watch what you eat. I see so many wrestlers on the independent shows. The fans look like they're in better shape than them. I mean, have some pride. You know, go for a walk, eat a salad, eat some chicken, eat some broccoli, do your cardio. You know, do the things you have to do to make sure you have a successful life. If you think it's just going to be wrestling, you're going to be miserable. So I really don't have anything to plug. I'm just, you know, happy that I wanted to let everyone know I accepted a position for a nice job up in South Carolina. I'm going to sell my house here and go up there. But none of that would have happened if I hadn't applied myself earlier. So all you young wrestlers, do your cardio, apply yourselves, be safe, and tuck your chin. So I always say, tuck your chin.
Oh yeah, thank you. And then, man, wise words for sure. Well, Larry, it's been a pleasure. It's been a really fun trip down memory lane, and just boy, kind of peeking behind the curtain of that golden era. And want to thank you for walking us through all that and all the people watching out there.
One thing I would say is, you know, we don't come on the show to just bash wrestling. I always like to say the good things too. If you have an opportunity, and I have no skin in the game. I promise I have no skin. I retired from wrestling 3 years ago. But if you want to see quality independent wrestling, look up Coastal Championship Wrestling down here in Florida and just look at the matches that they have. And if you want to see quality independent, you know, Rob Craze was on saying that, you know, a lot of the shows in California are dog shit. Which I believe. I scouted California, you know, many years ago, and I wasn't impressed. But check out CCW. But I really have a blast, you know, being on here with you guys. I really do.
Yeah, same
here. We truly enjoy it, and you know, all the time you give us here.
Yeah, whenever you guys want. And listen, you could keep me out here for 10 hours talking about wrestling. You'll have to pry me off. I love it's, you know, it's still my passion.
Well, you know, maybe to give you one plug, is there a way anyone could reach you maybe if they want to, you know, hire you for your services as far as maybe, you know, a wrestling clinic or seminar?
You know, best thing to do, reach out to me on Facebook. You know, my shoot name is Larry Arch. You know, just message me, you know, there. That's probably, you know, just, you know, reach out. If you ever saw me wrestle years ago, you know, please, I always love talking about it. You're not going to be annoying me. You know, I made many friends out of wrestling fans over the years. It's amazing. Just meeting them and staying in touch with them. But yeah, please, always feel free to drop me a line on Facebook.
Terrific. Well, thank you, Larry. Really, once again, a pleasure. And yeah, you're always welcome to come back on here. And for all of us,
Chris, thank you. Plugs real quick for yourself.
Just hit me up on Facebook. My name, Chris Claus, for any sort of play-by-play commentary bookings for wrestling. And if you're a nonprofit, a charity, I will be glad to be your charity auctioneer. I do nonprofit auctions. So Chris Claus on Facebook, hit me up on my messenger. And Eric, to you, thank you as well.
Thank you, Chris, as always.
Yeah. Well, Larry, thank you once again. It's been great having you on. This is an exciting episode, a great episode. I think a lot of people are going to really enjoy this one. So for Eric Malikian, our guest, Larry Ludden, producer, according to Adam Woods, my name is Chris Claus. Thank you for joining us right here.